You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there. My name is Kelly Barner, and today is Friday, May 31st, 2024.
6.
This week's Procurement 6 is brought to you by Jerry Seinfeld. Well, not really. But I did want to share a few words from his recent commencement speech at Duke University. Here is what he said. About work, you know how they always say, nobody ever looks back on their life and wishes they spent more time at the office. Well, why? Why don't they? Guess what? Depends on the job. If you took a stupid job that you find out you hate and you don't leave, that's your fault. Don't blame work. Work is wonderful. I definitely will be looking back on my life wishing I worked less. If that's not how you feel at work, quit. On your lunch break, disappear. Make people go, what happened to that guy? I don't know. Said he was getting something to eat and never came back. Now, my professional story is the opposite of what Jerry Seinfeld offered up. I was interviewed for a podcast called Art of Procurement and never left. I saw a place I wanted to work and I went after it. Of course, the downside of that is that I think I've stopped for lunch not one time since. But that's okay, because I'm with Jerry Seinfeld. Work is wonderful, especially when you work at Art of Procurement.
5.
On that positive note, this week we get to mark a huge milestone, episode 700 of the Art of Procurement podcast. Now, to celebrate, Philip Eidson found himself in the hot seat as he was interviewed by longtime friend and fellow procurement leader Mark Holyoke. Mark is the owner and managing director of Holyoke Search, and this conversation took them through Phil's professional and personal journey in procurement. In this short clip from their sit-down, Mark asks Phil what advice he would give to other aspiring procurement entrepreneurs. Let's listen in as Phil finds himself on the other side of the interviewer's table.
So if there's a whole slew of aspiring entrepreneurs, right, who are sitting in a procurement role today, but are perhaps looking to start their own business, whether it's a full-time business or a side hustle, right? But they're nervous about taking that first step, or they're unsure about where to start. What advice would you have for them?
I would say when you're thinking about what that might be, what pain points do you feel the most as a practitioner? You know, as you think about where you should focus, that's where I'd kind of look and think about where to focus. Some of the most successful companies that have come out of procurement professionals, this is on the software side, have come from individuals that have had a problem or seen an opportunity and like, I wish I had that, or I wish that we had this software or whatever in their own teams and it didn't exist, so they went and built it. I talked with Pierre Laprie yesterday, who did that when he was in France, and I'm blanking the company he worked for, but he basically formed Pear and Gooster out of challenges that he had. The great thing about that was they then became his first client. So he already had a client that he could then sell into. That's the hardest thing, is how can you... it's got to be something that is there's a gap in the market that you can have some kind of differentiator for. It doesn't need to be something that's completely different than has gone before it, because you can build on the shoulders of others that have entered into certain markets. And what's the likelihood of you getting early customers? Because at the end of the day, whether you're going out as an independent contractor or consultant on with an expertise in a specific category of spend, or if you're looking at doing a software company, it's all about cash and how can you get cash as quickly as possible. What's the fastest route to cash?
To hear the full conversation between Phil and Mark, go to artofprocurement.com/podcast or search for Art of Procurement and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also click the direct link in today's show notes.
4.
Pharmaceutical supply chains are never far from news headlines. Regular drug shortages affect our families, friends, and neighbors when they can't access their chemotherapy treatments, ADHD medication, and pain medication, just to name a few. In 2023, Americans spent over $600 billion on prescription drugs. That's more than ever before and more than any other country in the world. 90% of those prescriptions are for generic drugs, although they represent only 20% of total spending. Pharmaceutical supply chains are complex, highly regulated, global, and associated with huge profit margins, but not for all medicines, and the R&D costs are usually just as astronomical as the profits. In this week's episode of Art of Supply, I attempted to distill one of the most complex supply chains in the world down to what end up being some very familiar dynamics: profitability, globalization, and a troubling level of market concentration. To hear the full episode, you can go to artofprocurement.com/supply, subscribe to Art of Supply wherever you find your audio entertainment, or sign up to receive the Art of Supply LinkedIn newsletter.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
The H5N1 virus, known to its friends as bird flu, is not just spreading among birds in the supply chain. It has recently jumped to beef cattle and, in a few cases, human beings. The virus has now been found in 32 herds in 8 states. But is it time to worry? In this week's episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast, Chris Lance joined me for our monthly sit-down to talk about the concerns associated with the bird flu, including questions that are being raised about why the federal government is missing its own reporting deadlines and, in some cases, providing incomplete data. The direct connection between transparency and trust in the face of troubling news, and why this is yet another reminder for supply chain professionals to double down on fundamentals like testing and data quality. To listen to the episode, search for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcast audio, or head to una.com/resources.
2.
In other news, Amazon continues to push the limits of delivery speed, using analytics to reconfigure their domestic distribution network once again. They have cut delivery times in half since 2018. Localizing the 100 most in-demand products by region and handling picking, packing, and distribution from one location has allowed them to shorten the distance between warehouse and consumer, even in rural areas. In order to do this, Amazon has added 16 million square feet of warehouse space in the first half of 2024 alone. Now, what's driving this change? Multiple factors, including competition from Walmart and Target, who can leverage their store locations for fulfillment, as well as Shein and Temu, who are attracting customers with their strikingly low prices. Now, I have a feeling that the data and analytics underpinning this strategy, as well as the associated investments, are a thing of beauty. Now, did AI help? Probably. But just as important is having the courage and the vision to challenge your own approach, taking a leading position and absolutely never taking it for granted. Check out the link in today's show notes to access a recent LinkedIn discussion I started on this topic.
1.
Before I let you go, I want to share an upcoming event. On June 5th, join us for Renaissance versus Resistance, Embracing Human-Centric AI, a live conversation with Darshan Dekmukh, President at Procurability. At that event, we'll talk about what human-centric AI really means, how effectively integrated AI can augment procurement's efforts, and we'll dig into some use cases about the additional results that procurement can deliver. Click the link in today's show notes or go to artofprocurement.com/calendar to see all of our upcoming events.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.